be looking at cards that on paper seem absolutely absurd and game-breaking, but somehow never really became staples or even as common as you'd think. What are some cards that are insane but end up either bad or just okay? First off, I began with the suggestion of Ghost Reaper and Winter Cherries. You think to yourself, wow, just completely eliminate and banish every single copy face down of your opponent's boss monster from their extra deck. This just has to be the best card ever, right? Well, since its release in 2016, it's been in the meta maybe like less than a handful of times here, but it does find its format occasionally, so it's very underwhelming. Simul Archfiends. The fuck is this? Neither player can special monsters with the same card types, Ritual Fusion, Synchro, XC, they already control. Well, that's really funny. This is supposed to be some sort of like, there can be only one, but for types of extra deck monsters, sort of. I was hoping this would turn out to be a new D barrier, but also for links, but unfortunately never really came up as a valid floodgate against anything. Waybridge. If your opponent controls 2 or more monsters than you do, your opponent must send monsters they control to the grave, so they only control 1 monster. Seems like a pretty crazy board wipe of sorts, but not really that impressive, is it? Same sort of thing that has plagued Yu-Gi-Oh! For a while. Most trap cards are just worse versions of each other. It's decent, it's okay, but there's just better cards, right? Like, this isn't a bad card by any stretch of the imagination. There's just better. World Sea Dragons Atlantis. I think people probably expected this to be the new crazy wombo combo of the format, resetting all your soft once per turn effects, bringing everything back, and then activating them all again. The best example of this really is like Draco Slayer, being able to take full advantage of it. But other than that, there's not really been a ton of decks that super abuse Atlantis, other than Marincess. Odd-Eyes Gravity Dragon. This thing is pretty okay. It's an on-summon Trunade that can't be responded to, and then it acts as a Red Eyes Dark Flare Metal burn effect every time they activate a card. Now, this might surprise you why this card isn't very good. If you look at the color of the frame, you can sort of identify what the problem with this card is. This card reads like the most busted shit ever, but it saw play for like a week. I'm sure there's decent amount of uses for it. I think I saw it in like a branded side deck once or something, and that was maybe it. It's probably gonna have its deck eventually. There's just way too many light and dark monsters and targets for it to not be good eventually. It just needs to probably find its deck. Alpha, the Master of Beasts. This card was very overhyped. It was essentially supposed to be the replacement to Pankratops. It's not terrible. It's seen a little bit of play. The fact that it's a beast might have seen it been in a couple of Tri-Brigade decks, for example, because you can banish it from the graveyard if you've already gotten use out of it. But other than that, there's a very important part of this card here. It is not a quick effect. Junk Speeder. Do I even need to say it? Summon 4 to 5 monsters is good until you play Synchron. Okay, in terms of another Yu-Gi-Oh card that reads like a custom card, Tally-Ho is absolutely broken and one of the best cards in Springans. The problem is that it's still a Springan card. I feel like we expected the new Volcanics to make a bigger slash than they did on launch, but they didn't. No one expected that, unfortunately. Unless you watch Lithium. I will say, however, there might be a chance that it synergizes well with the Fire King structure deck, and I think the Fire King structure deck might be a meta deck. So maybe you'll see some Volcanic cards in there. In theory, it's compulsory for 2, but, you know. Target 2 monsters your opponent controls that were special from the extra deck, shuffle them back into the deck. You can only activate 1 per turn. Pretty good card. It's actually decent. It just compulses 2 extra deck monsters. The problem is, like, you have to already be in a situation where you can set it, wait, survive, and then activate it, and then hope that one of those 2 extra deck monsters doesn't negate. Is this really just better in a generic catch-all situation than, like, I don't know, Solemn Strike? You know what I mean? You're never going to play around it, but sometimes your opponent does just have 1 extra deck monster and a bunch of guys, right? Crossout Designator was hyped up to be an insane card before its TCG release. It's kind of just a niche tech card now. Get him, boys. Get him. People think because this makes a very good control strategy on OCG, it was going to do the same thing in the TCG. So while OCG did have a unique Decode Talker Heat Soul deck specifically that was literally just like Cyberse piles that did absolutely nothing and had 0 win condition except summon Heat Soul and draw 2. Yes, that didn't really translate over to the TCG, but Heat Soul is very much a staple in basically every Cyberse deck. There's lots of Ignister combos that end on the towers plus Heat Soul. This was always a backup plan in Salmon Great. Spellbound. I remember seeing countless videos about people explaining why this card was a straight upgrade over D-Barrier. Share with the class who these Yugi tubers were, please. I would love to, I want to know their location, because no one said this that I recall. Weren't you one of them? No? Find me one section of this video where I say this card is an upgrade over D-Barrier. Don't say the title, okay? There's no way you're saying Spellbound sucks. D-Barrier has no effect going second, so you know it's called the trade-off. It's worst warning point. Y'all actually suck. That's crazy. The biggest problem is people are colorblind and keep thinking it's a purple card when it's green. It's a soft D-Barrier that you can use going second. Leaking private DMs to prove a point, dude. Power Sync Stone. Mystic Mind's little brother. This is what you see in Bronze and Master Duel. I have seen this card so many times in Silver and below, but that's about it. Lullaby was a card I thought was extremely good because you could call a hand trap and get it for free or get a free boss monster on the field. It wasn't until I took it to Locust Find that people would rather summon the hand trap or give you a dead card in hand. Lullaby of Obedience is pretty terrible, except in super hyper-specific situations. It's a monster that has to be good in the hand or good in the field. There was only like 2 instances ever in the history of Yu-Gi-Oh where this is actually like a good card, right? Remember when this was revealed and people thought it would be playable? What the hell is this? If 10 or more cards and effects have been activated during this turn, oh, this is great for the tier bearer. Special this as an effect monster, 30-30. Still a trap, but it set it in the thing during the end phase. Once per turn, when your opponent activates a card effect while this is in your monster zone, quick effect destroys as many cards opponent as possible, then set this card in your spell and trap zone. Who said this was good? You did? Citation immediately, right now. Right now, Dyer, or you're fired, banned, and not getting paid for the subathon. Go, right now. Suck my dick. Ultimate Slayer. You think this would have been the best removal card period, but nope, literally never seen this played ever. Well, literally this past weekend, I've seen this in multiple side decks. Now, I will say that, to be fair, admittedly, Ultimate Slayer on release, and maybe up until now, hasn't really seen any play, to be fair. It's just that the biggest problem is in a meta with Cash Tira for the last, like, 400 years. Sending cards to the graveyard is basically unviable. Was good in tier, is good right now. Could have been the new take your normal summon engine, but he just never took off. So I don't really know if you can take a card from like 2003 and be like, yeah, this card was announced and no one thought it would be good. Like, I don't know what you're talking about. Hey, Trunade, one of the alternatives to Lightning Storm and Duster, but rarely sees play because of a lot of back row can't be activated or before the activation. Yeah, I mean, Hey, Trunade's biggest problem, I think, is that it doesn't bounce face-up cards. You know, if you can't bounce Floodgates, then... Found card of last one in my collection a year ago, was astonished I've never seen it come up in popular lists. If the attack of a monster you control becomes 0 by a card effect, draw until you have 5 cards in your hand. Great side deck card against Yugioh deck, I suppose. What deck is setting your monster to 0? Read the bottom of the card. Cannot be... Oh, for fuck's sake, you pieces of shit. Oh my god! Back in the day, I got baited by my locals into thinking this card was a 3-elf staple for any deck. I played this in Burning Abyss. It was the best fucking card ever printed. Do not say Supply Squad was bad. This shit was insane. Start of the battle phase. Change the equipped monster's battle position. If you do immediately after this effect resolves normal summon, you can only use effect once per turn. Tap position, your opponent can target the equipped monster with card effects. No, I don't think this even reads good. No Material is probably a good one. I think a lot of people probably saw No Material and were like, damn, this card is crazy good. But I want to say I've seen it in like one format, and that was maybe it. It sounds a lot better than it is, but... You know, for the most part, I don't think this card has seen really any competitive play except for like one format. Slated to be an extremely powerful card on release after its great performance in the OCG, and this was the chase card of Duel, and once it came out, it found its home in Vanquish Soul, I guess. It kind of fell flat on its face after release. Well, there is one reason I can spoiler you for. The reason why this card hasn't seen any play is Magic Dragon is on the ban list. Don't get me wrong, it ain't banned, but just hasn't become a staple like you'd think by basically saying you cannot use this card. There's no reason not to play it and declare Ash Blossom or Nibiru. Realistically, the biggest problem is that it's not a quick play. It's basically like you can't really just rely on having to declare a random card your opponent has and just hoping that like that's the one they had. There's so many hand traps and disruptions in Yu-Gi-Oh! That you can't really just gamble on, like, you know, your opponent having that one. All right, that's it. That's the thread. Good job, everyone. Yay! Yay! All right, we did the thread. MBT is threatening to sue me, but this is his problem.